Born in the 1950s, Gray Fox, also known as Frank Yeager, was a mercenary and former agent of the United States Special Forces unit Foxhound. Originally a child soldier who fought in Mozambique, Frank Yeager spent his early years fighting as a child soldier for the Frelimo guerrilla fighters in the Mozambique War of Independence. Known for his cruel war tactics, he would trick enemies into letting their guard down, acting with the franklessness of a young boy before killing them with the ruthlessness of a hunter. In 1966, newly promoted Big Boss became acquainted with Yeager in Mozambique after stopping him in battle and placed the young boy in a rehabilitation facility, believing that he would be safe. While at the rehab center, Yeager was taken by the CIA and used as a test subject for the Perfect Soldier project. The project turned the boy into a much more efficient soldier, capable of killing his targets without remorse. In 1970, Frank Yeager was given the name the Perfect Soldier, and during the events of the Cyborg takeover, he was pitted against Big Boss but was unable to defeat him. During his fight against Big Boss, Frank Yeager was haunted by memories of his past, and after losing his fight against Big Boss offered to help him recover his broken mind and was sent to a hospital alongside Big Boss's ally Roy Campbell to see if he could be treated for his physical and mental damages. After recovering from the events of the Cyborg takeover, Frank Yeager returned to the battlefield in 1979 during the Rhodesian Civil War and was responsible for killing the parents of a young girl. But filled with guilt, he chose to adopt the young girl and care for her as his sister. This little girl would grow up to become Dr. Naomi Hunter. During the 1990s, Frank Yeager was trained alongside a fellow agent named David, and both would become members of the special unit Foxhound. But Frank Yeager would receive the title Fox, while his friend and fellow agent David would receive the code name Solid Snake. In 1995, however, Frank Yeager, now going under the code name Gray Fox, was assigned to Operation Intrude N-312 to recover information on a newly designed weapon. However, his mission was a complete failure and he was later captured, only to be rescued by Solid Snake, only for both of them to discover that the secret weapon was a newly designed model of Metal Gear. After learning that the commander of the Foxhound unit, Big Boss, was responsible for this event, Gray Fox left Foxhound and sided himself with Big Boss in order to seek out new goals alongside his commander and longtime friend. 4 years later, during the Zanzibar land riots, Gray Fox would now face his former ally Solid Snake in battle, but would be defeated alongside his commander Big Boss, who was at the time presumed dead. After the fall of Big Boss, Gray Fox, now badly injured, would be recovered by the Patriots, and through cybernetic surgery became a guinea pig for Foxhound's chief medic, Dr. Clark, and her genotherapy experiments. However, Gray Fox's adopted sister, Naomi Hunter, would go undercover to join the Foxhound unit to help rescue him, and although she was successful and would help Gray Fox kill Dr. Clark, who was now at the time known to be one of the founding members of the Patriots, his mind was so badly damaged that it left only a single desire to fight Solid Snake once again. In 2005, during the Shadow Moses incident, with the help of his sister Naomi Hunter, Gray Fox was able to track down Solid Snake once again and face him in battle. However, later on during Solid Snake's mission, Gray Fox would join forces with Snake in order to help him battle the newly designed Metal Gear Rex, which was now being piloted by Solid Snake's twin genetic brother, Liquid Snake. During the battle, however, Gray Fox's arm was completely cut off and he was crushed under the foot of Metal Gear Rex. His last words to Solid Snake would be the driving motivation to Solid Snake's long life goal to destroy all Metal Gear weapons. Solidus Snake, whose real name was George Sears, was born in 1972, and like his brothers, he was created by the Patriots as part of the Les Infanteries project, which purpose was to create a genetic clone of the greatest soldier who had ever lived, Big Boss. Unlike his brothers, who were not identical to Big Boss, with one carrying the recessive genes and one carrying the dominant genes, Solidus was a perfect clone of Big Boss. During his teenage years, Solidus would work for the CIA paramilitary and would eventually be dispatched to Libya to take part in their civil war. While in Libya, Solidus would adopt the young boy named Jack after mistakenly killing his parents, and would train Jack to become a ruthless killer at the age of 6, wanting Jack to be proficient with the use of bladed weapons. Solidus had Jack serve as part of his small boy unit in the Army of the Devil, in which Jack proved himself to be one of Solidus' best child soldiers through his amazing record of kills. gaining platoon leadership of the unit at the age of 10, and earning himself the nicknames the White Devil and Jack the Ripper. However, after the war's end, Jack suddenly disappeared from a refugee camp, leaving Solidus to wonder what happened to him for some time. In the early 2000s, the Patriots entrusted Solidus with the presidency of the United States, making George Sears the 43rd United States president. In 2005, Solidus, acting in secret from the Patriots' eyes, and orchestrated a terror uprising in total secrecy, in which he ordered his agents to persuade the Foxhound Unit's squad leader, Liquid Snake, into hijacking Metal Gear Rex. His intentions were to have his agents steal the Rex data and the experimental nuclear warhead with which it was to be armed, and Solidus hoped to use this as a tool against the Patriots, to whom he had grown to hate. However, an unknown factor that Solidus had no anticipation for was that the Secretary of Defense issued an order to commence a nuclear air raid on Shadow Moses after Rex's destruction. After the Shadow Moses incident, the existence of the Metal Gear Rex weapon and the Geno armies were both exposed to the public alongside the truth behind Solidus' involvement in orchestrating the event, to which the Patriots removed Solidus from the presidency and covering up by telling the general public that he had resigned. Solidus now being forced to go underground after learning that his creators were planning to eliminate him as punishment, he would encounter the rogue agent Revolver Ocelot, and would actually fund to have his arm replaced by the corpse of his genetic brother, Liquid Snake. Together the two began formulating a plan to strike back at the Patriots and would team up with a private army of Russian mercenaries along with an anti-terrorist unit, Dead Cell, which had been secretly created during his presidency. In 2009, Solidus, alongside his special unit Dead Cell, now called the Sons of Liberty, took control of the offshore cleanup facility, the Big Shell, and managed to capture his successor, President James Johnson. Solidus Snake's plan was to take control of the new and highly advanced warship Arsenal gear and use it against the Patriots. During this time, Solidus would encounter the rookie Foxhound agent Raiden, who seemed somewhat familiar to him. Solidus would also encounter his genetic brother Solid Snake, who was believed to have died in a tanker accident years ago. Solidus would battle Raiden, and with the use of a Harrier jet, but unfortunately would be defeated in the process and would end up losing one of his eyes and was forced to retreat. After Raiden was captured by Solidus, Solidus realized that Raiden was actually his adopted son Jack, and he went on to explain their connection to each other. When Raiden made his escape with the help of Solid Snake, his ally Revolver Ocelot revealed that the entire Big Shell incident was orchestrated by the Patriots as nothing more than a recreation of the Zanzibar land riots, which was intended for Raiden to kill Solidus, just as Solid Snake had killed his father Big Boss. With Arsenal gear crashing into Manhattan, both Solidus and Raiden fell on top of the Federal Hall building, and it was during this time that both Solidus and Raiden were forced to face each other for specific reasons. Solidus needed to kill Raiden in order to gain access to the data that would reveal the identities of the Patriots, and Raiden needed to kill Solidus, otherwise the Patriots would kill his future wife. With the stakes set in place, Solidus and Raiden face each other for the last time, and after a hard-fought battle, Raiden emerged victorious, cutting down his adoptive father. However, despite his injuries, Solidus did not die, but was left brain dead, and his body was retrieved by the leader of the Paradise Lost Army's leader, Big Mama, once known as Eva. Since Solidus was a perfect clone of Big Boss, Big Mama used Solidus' body for spare parts to help rebuild Big Boss's body. And in 2014, when Liquid Ocelot attempted to take control of the Patriots' AI system, he managed to gain possession of Solidus' body, believing that it was Big Boss's original body, and after extracting the DNA sample that he needed to help him achieve his goal, Liquid Ocelot and his associate Vamp tossed the remains into a fire, and with one final shot to the head, Liquid Ocelot destroyed the final remains of Solidus Snake once and for all. Well, what's up again there guys, Brian here at 3TR, and I'm here to present my third versus series matchup for my second season. And this time I'll be pitting the Cyborg Ninja Gray Fox against the perfect clone of Big Boss himself, Solidus Snake. Now my reasoning behind pitting these two against each other was mostly due to their current popularity amongst fans. Gray Fox is one of the most popular characters in the entire Metal Gear Solid franchise. However, Most fans do not really know all that much about him in his backstory or his actual effectiveness in combat. While Solidus Snake in comparison is a much more significant character, but is vastly underrated in my opinion. With my goal of this video in the hopes of helping fans gain a higher appreciation for him as a character and as a combatant. And with that out of the way, it is now time to compare and contrast, and I shall start by comparing them physically. Due to the amount of complete damage Gray Fox took as a result of his defeat by Solidus Snake during the events of the Zanzibar land riots, along with having his body blown apart due to a landmine, Gray Fox's body had to be rebuilt through cybernetic surgery, which included a prosthetic right hand and a powered exoskeleton that was grafted directly onto his body by inserting a cybernetic module at the skeletal level, granting Fox enhanced strength and agility. Though he was well past his physical prime, being in his early to mid-50s by the time of the Shadow Moses incident, Gray Fox's exoskeleton enabled him to jump great heights and move his body in ways that his original body could not. He was also able to move his body fast enough to dodge bullets fired at him from Metal Gear Rex's machine guns, and it is in my personal theory that at some point, even without the use of his auto-cam tech, he could move his body faster than the human eye could see. Though the material of his exoskeleton itself was rather tough, it seemed to be able to not protect Gray Fox's organic body from harm, as Solidus Snake was able to damage Gray Fox enough to force him into a retreat despite the fact that they were simply fist fighting during their second fight at Shadow Moses. Along with having his entire left arm cut completely off due to Metal Gear Rex's laser beam and being pinned to the wall by Metal Gear Rex's cockpit hub to the point where Gray Fox was unable to move, only to be completely flattened by the force of the weight of Rex's foot, it is my theory that Gray Fox's exoskeleton had a similar function to old Snake's muscle suit, and the fact that it enabled a badly broken body to function at a normal rate, or in Gray Fox's case, a superhuman rate. At the time of his defeat by Raiden's hands, Solidus Snake was a 37-year-old human male standing about 6 feet tall, and being a perfect clone of Big Boss, shared similar physical properties of his genetic father. However, due to genetic manipulation, Solidus, like his brother Solid Snake, did suffer from accelerated aging, and by the time of his defeat by Raiden, he most likely would have had the body that Big Boss had during the events of the Zanzibar land riots, putting him well past his physical prime. However, to compensate for this, Solidus wore an exoskeleton which granted him a number of enhanced physical properties. The exoskeleton suit was built by DARPA and increased the wearer's speed, strength, agility, and durability, and was built using the same artificial muscle technology initially developed for Metal Gear Ray. The suit also granted its users enhanced reflexes fast enough to deflect machine gun fire with or without a weapon equipped. As opposed to other exosuits that had permanent settings when it came to the level of performance that the suit could execute, Solidus' suit had multiple settings that could be activated at will. So at any given time, Solidus could reduce one factor of the suit's abilities to enhance another, allowing him to be able to throw his opponents off guard. The suit was also very heavily armored, allowing Solidus' suit to take a great deal of punishment before Solidus' physical body could take any actual damage. However, a slight deficiency that Solidus Snake possessed physically was that during his first fight against Raiden, he lost his left eye, losing half of his visibility. Though this did not slow him down or make him any less intimidating in combat, in a whole, Solidus as a combatant may not have been in his physical prime to operate in combat, but thanks to his exoskeleton suit, it allowed him to easily match, if not outperform, most combatants regardless of their physicality. When comparing the physical capabilities between Gray Fox and Solidus Snake, due to them both using exoskeletons, I feel that one must judge them in two categories: their capabilities in and outside the suits, and unfortunately for Gray Fox, he is completely outclassed in both categories. Outside the suit, Gray Fox is completely useless. He has suffered so much damage from his defeat by the hands of Solid Snake that he was legitimately a vegetable unable to even move. While Solidus more or less had the body of Big Boss during the Zanzibar land riots, which may have put him past his physical prime, but he was still very capable in combat. And Big Boss himself was still combat ready even though he was going into his late 70s, and even without the accelerated aging, Solidus still would be at least 20 years younger. Now inside their suits, Gray Fox's exoskeleton suit did nothing more but simply give him the same combative level performance, if not slightly higher in terms of strength, that he had during his time when he was known as the Perfect Soldier 35 years before the Shadow Moses incident. However, I would like to say that even by this time, his body was not nearly as durable as his younger body, as Solid Snake was able to force him into a retreat using only his fists, while his younger body was durable enough to take up-close shots from a shotgun. While Solidus' exoskeleton suit not only enhanced all of his physical capabilities to superhuman levels, but it was equipped with layers upon layers of armor that added to his suit, making him much tougher to take down without slowing him down at all. What we have here is a crippled war veteran wearing a muscle suit against a middle-aged man wearing a suit of armor that would put Darth Vader's suit to shame. And it is for these reasons that I'm giving the decisive physical edge to Solidus Snake. By the time of the Shadow Moses incident, Gray Fox had been through more than 40 years of combat, with his main set of weapons and a majority of his engagements being bladed weapons. Therefore, there is no doubt that all of his cybernetic enhancements applied alongside his swordsman skills were highly developed and mastered. I'm personally willing to go so far to state that out of all the blade users in the entire Metal Gear Solid franchise, Gray Fox was the overall best. Gray Fox was very keen at using his exceptional battlefield experience and his body's enhancements to maneuver around a battle site, being able to move so fast that even Solid Snake had difficulty keeping track of Gray Fox's movements. His reflexes were so heightened that he was even able to move his blade faster than the human eye could see, and was even able to deflect machine gun rounds fired directly at him. Gray Fox was also very keen at using the environment to his advantage, and in his first encounter against Solid Snake at Shadow Moses, he was able to slice out a large section of the ceiling and kick it right at Solid Snake, forcing Solid Snake to leap over the boulder, losing his footing. It is also my belief that Gray Fox was highly skilled in the use of hand-to-hand combat, evident by him being trained alongside Solid Snake during their time in Foxhound. However, within all his engagement, it is clear that Solid Snake's skills in hand-to-hand combat were clearly superior to his. Gray Fox, being a member of Foxhound, was also very skilled at relying on the use of stealth techniques and maneuvers instead of attempting all-out offensive, which was his usual approach in combat. However, he would only apply these techniques and maneuvers if he was not given any other choice. Without a doubt, Gray Fox was just as much of a dedicated soldier as his friends Big Boss and Solid Snake were, and although he did not develop his skill set to the same degree as theirs, as a soldier, he would clearly stand in a unique class of his own, being well worthy of the code name Fox. Out of all of the genetically created sons of Big Boss, Solidus Snake without question had the least developed amount of military training or experience on the battlefield. However, this does not mean that as a combatant that he was any less dangerous. He spent a great deal of time in his youth training with the CIA and would be very proficient with the use of close quarters combat and the use of firearms. During Solidus' time training Raiden, he developed a specialization with bladed weapons and would pass this down to his adoptive son Raiden. When Solidus took command of the Sons of Liberty unit, he would adopt the use of an exoskeleton suit in combat, and now having enhanced physical capabilities at his disposal, he would simply adopt his previous combative skills to take advantage of all the capabilities his exosuit provided. For starters, Solidus, being an expert with bladed weapons, would adopt the use of a Daishio fighting style, which used the pairing of a katana and wakashi blades, allowing him to make it much easier for blocking and attacking techniques at the same time. Solidus also incorporated the use of kicks within his sword maneuvers, and though, unlike the other members of the Sons of Liberty's unit, he lacked a great degree of actual combat experience between his time training Raiden during the Liberian Civil War and the Manhattan Incident. What Solidus lacked in combat experience, he more than made up for it with his combat ingenuity. Solidus may be bringing more combative tricks into this contest, but Gray Fox is more than capable of actively responding to everything Solidus can throw at him. And on the other hand, Solidus may not be nearly as skilled as Gray Fox in a straightforward manner. However, he does have enough defensive counters to successfully hold off Gray Fox's usual head-to-head approach for a great deal of time, and certainly would be long enough for him to come up with an effective counter-maneuver. In a straightforward offensive manner, both Gray Fox and Solidus can effectively respond to everything the other can dish out at them, and despite Gray Fox's decades of combat experience over Solidus, I do not believe that this will be enough to grant him the overall edge. One must remember that despite Gray Fox's popularity and legendary status, Gray Fox has yet to successfully gain any victories in any of his single one-on-one combat engagements that he has taken part in. He failed to defeat Big Boss in both of their engagements when he was younger. He was quickly subdued by Gene during the same time frame, and even when he was much older and much more experienced, he was unable to defeat Solid Snake in all three of their engagements, and was caught completely off guard when he faced Liquid Snake while he was piloting Metal Gear Rex, leading to his death. However, there is one combative skill set that does seem to tip the scale in one's favor, and that is the use of Gray Fox's stealth tactics. Gray Fox was certainly skilled enough using his exceptional speed to catch groups of enemies off guard, and being trained alongside Big Boss and Solid Snake, it is my belief that under the right conditions, if Gray Fox chose to not rely on his heavy forward offensive tactics and relying on his own physical speed, then the advantages of his own exoskeleton suit could provide the same advantages at a distance, and this skill set could certainly be applied to a single opponent. And what's more is that out of all of the members of the Snake lineage, Solidus was the only one who neither applied nor had been trained to actively be able to respond to such techniques, which does give Gray Fox a reliable fallback option if and when the opportunity presents itself. And it is for these reasons that I'm granting the slight edge to Gray Fox in martial skills. By the time of the Shadow Moses incident, Gray Fox's array of ornament and battle tech was very limited, but in his hands was extremely effective. Gray Fox used a chokador sword model from around the 8th century, and the sword itself measured at about 40 inches from the hilt to the tip of the blade. A distinct feature of the chokador was its straight blade, similar to the ancient swords found by the Three Kingdom periods of China. With this weapon design, it is clear that it was best used as a slashing and thrusting weapon, and Gray Fox had also equipped it an arm-mounted cannon capable of firing energy projectiles. From doing some research on the weapon itself, I was able to determine that this weapon could fire off about 20 shots before it ran out of ammunition. On the tech side of things, Gray Fox's exoskeleton came in with a built-in stealth camouflage, allowing him to remain undetected even in the center of an enemy's compound. The exoskeleton could also be demonstrated to emit electromagnetic waves that could cause radars to short out should the wearer be in close proximity. With one of Gray Fox's titles of being known as the Cyborg Ninja, it is clear that his array of weapons and tech aided the notion of being quiet but deadly. Solidus was properly equipped to handle multiple combat situations from any range. His primary firearm was a P90 submachine gun with an effective fire range of 200 meters and carried a magazine box of 50 rounds. He also carried a pair of katana and wakashi high-frequency blades, with the katana measuring at about 32 inches from the hilt to the tip of the blade, with the wakashi blade being much shorter, measuring at about only 16 inches. Solidus' exoskeleton was also equipped to aid him in battle. The suit could act like a muscle suit and could greatly increase his strength or speed at will. It also allowed a skilled swords user to deflect high barrage of machine gun fire with relative ease. The suit was also able to withstand attacks from bladed weapons due to the sensor stretching between the interior and the surface of the suit, comparable to a neutral network, which upon detecting an impact would instantaneously react by automatically contracting and defusing the damage. It was also equipped with a built-in accelerator unit that allowed the user to make quick movements across terrain, leaving a trail of flames in their path. The suit was also armed with two tentacle or snake arms that could be used to grab or choke an opponent to death, and also had the ability to fire off small missiles. The snake arms could be ejected to further increase the wearer's speed and agility even more now that the extra layer of armor was no longer equipped, but will leave the wearer much more vulnerable to physical damage. Gray Fox and Solidus Snake certainly do carry their own unique set of arm and equipment into this contest. However, between the two of them, it is clear that Solidus Snake would clearly have the advantage. When it comes to their range of weapons, Gray Fox's chocodo sword may be longer than Solidus' blades, but Solidus' katana and wakashi dual blade combo gives him more options and the ability to attack and defend at the same time, giving Solidus a much faster counter-attack reaction. Gray Fox's arm-mounted cannon may pack a much bigger punch than Solidus' P90 submachine gun, but the P90 submachine gun certainly has a higher fire rate and carries far more ammunition than Gray Fox's arm-mounted cannon, being limited to only 20 shots. However, between these two weapons, I don't really believe that either of these weapons will really play a major part in this battle, since Gray Fox's reflexes are so fast that he can not only dodge bullets, but he can deflect them just as easily, and while Solidus' exoscoot does grant him lots of set of armor, which could easily withstand the mounted arm cannon shots for a time, and the reflexes that the suit provides Solidus would allow him to dodge the shots just as easily. But at the end of the day, it is the advancement of Solidus Snake's exoskeleton suit that would ultimately grant him the edge. Gray Fox's exoskeleton is very lightly armored and cannot take physical damage very well. Its built-in stealth camouflage is very useful and would certainly help him in this contest. However, the closer Gray Fox gets to his opponents, the easier he will be to see even when he is camouflaged, and this will certainly be an up-close fight. While not only does Solidus' exoskeleton suit have layers of armor, it has the unique ability to adapt Solidus' combative performance to his needs at will, and the two tentacle arms would grant him a much wider attacking radius and could be used to grab his opponents and pull them in closer, and once he chooses to wrap them around his body, they could simply act as another layer of armor to make it even harder for Gray Fox to get to him, either with his sword or with his mounted arm cannon. In the end, what this comes down to is Solidus is much better equipped for a head-to-head engagement and has a much greater range of defensive options than Gray Fox, and it is for these reasons that I am giving Solidus Snake the edge in weapons and equipment. Like all my previous matchups involving sword fighters, I will be using lightsaber fighting forms to help describe the combative and tactical approaches of both Gray Fox and Solidus in this contest. And with that statement out of the way, during Gray Fox's early life when he was known at the time as the Perfect Soldier, his combat design was based off the notion that he would be a sword-wielding combatant operating in the modern terms of warfare. Because of this, his tactical approach had to be capable of dealing with groups of opponents at once who would all be using firearms, and using his highly enhanced speed and reflexes could easily catch his opponents off guard and overwhelm them. Due to this, Gray Fox certainly would have been a well-rounded user of Forms 1, Seicho to deal with groups of enemies, Form 3, Surisu to deal with projectile defense, and Form 4, Ataro for mobility and the use of jumps and flips to resemble a blur of offensive motion. However, despite Gray Fox's offensive might, his tactical approach was still bogged down with problems. For starters, despite Gray Fox's offensive application, it seemed to not nearly be as effective against a well-trained single opponent as shown in his engagements against Big Boss and Gene. And despite what some would think, I do not believe that Gray Fox spent a great deal of time improving his skills with the blade during his time with Foxhound, and only begun reusing a blade after his reconstruction as a result of him being crippled during the Zanzibar land riots. And because of the nature of his reconstruction, this left Gray Fox completely incapable of taking part in a long-term head-to-head engagement. And because of this, Gray Fox's standard approach was based on relying on fast encounters to quickly and decisively overwhelm his opponent, then immediately engage another. Gray Fox's secondary tactical weakness was his inability to respond properly to maneuvers or techniques that he was not prepared for, and because of this, in the heat of a battle, he could be caught off guard quite easily. Gray Fox was practically the Grand Master Yoda of his time. He either takes his opponents down fast, or not at all. However, despite these weaknesses, Gray Fox did have the ability to use the environment as a distraction alongside his training with stealth techniques if his usual offensive approach didn't work. And it is in this particular tactic approach of his that I believe Gray Fox would be at his strongest. Solidus Snake was by no means a master of the sword, and despite his skill level, he would still be a challenge for just about any opponent. His ability to put up a stonewall defense and incorporate the use of physical strikes and other combative techniques within his sword maneuvers would certainly have made Solidus a well-rounded user of Forms 3 Surisu and Form 4 Ataru. Although in my opinion, Solidus' version of Form 4 Ataru would be much more grounded and strength-orientated, resembling Master Qui-Gon Jinn's version of the form, than the traditional version being much more based on mobility like Grandmaster Yoda's version of Ataru. Solidus had two standard combative stances depending on which layers of protection were equipped. When Solidus had his two technical arms attached, he would use his tentacles to keep his opponents at bay, and if they managed to close in the distance, he would then wrap the tentacles around his body to create an extra layer of armor, and then once the opponent had attacked, he would immediately counter with either his sword or physical strikes. If the tentacles took too much damage, forcing Solidus to have to eject them, Solidus would then use his suit's ability to amplify his speed and strength to close the distance in an attempt to break through an opponent's defense and overwhelm them. However, if this failed, he was more than prepared to go back to his original approach of allowing his suit to take whatever hits got through his initial defense and immediately retaliate. What Solidus had was two similar forms of counter responses. He was an extremely cautious combatant, not willing to make the first move at the beginning of the fight, and allowed his opponents to engage first so he could respond in kind. However, one of Solidus' greatest tactical weaknesses in his first form of combat was that his own combative approach and mindset completely worked against all of the combative advantages that he had at his disposal. For someone like Solidus, who had so much offensive might at his command, it makes very little sense to me that though he was so heavily protected, that he was still so cautious. And this plays into his second weakness of not willing to take the initiative once the opportunity presented itself. What Solidus lacks is a good follow-up to his counter-maneuvers. Solidus' exosuit was best suited to allow him to take part in a battle of attrition and setting up for the long haul. But if he encounters an opponent who can apply an equally effective tactic and can take the time to work around Solidus' guard and begin wearing down the armor of Solidus' suit, then he would find himself getting into trouble over the course of a battle. And if an opponent could present a tactical maneuver that he had no experience against, then Solidus' standard countering techniques would count for absolutely nothing, leaving him with no clue of how to respond. As battle tacticians, Gray Fox and Solidus Snake have some similar tactical techniques, but very different approaches. Gray Fox is very much an offensive combatant, always wanting to make the first move in an attempt to overwhelm his opponents, while Solidus has a much stronger defense, willing to let an opponent wear themselves down before countering with his own offensive. Due to Gray Fox's physical condition, he really is not prepared for a long-term engagement, and if he's unable to dispatch with an opponent immediately, then he would certainly find himself getting into trouble very quickly. While Solidus is in much better physical condition, and thanks to the advantages of his suit and armor provided, is more than willing to settle down for the long haul. However, he lacks the confidence to follow up on his counter maneuvers. Gray Fox's offensive might be undoubtedly effective to most opponents, but Solidus' defensive is strong enough to hold off Gray Fox's straightforward offensive for a great deal of time. But if Gray Fox tries to hold his ground against Solidus' offensive, then Gray Fox will be a dead man in no time. However, Gray Fox is not dumb enough to even attempt such a foolish tactic, since his jumping and flipping around would make him a much harder target to hit. And Solidus is too much of a counter-attacker than he is offensive fighter, and because of his cautious mindset, he is completely unable to take control of the fight. While Gray Fox not only will be able to take the initiative in the fight, he does possess the skill sets to be able to change up his entire approach and rules of the engagement. He can apply his skills with the use of stealth techniques and the ability to use the environment itself against his opponents to throw them off guard while he prepares to follow up with a sneak attack. And against something like this, Solidus really has no defense against these kind of maneuvers. What we have here is a ninja taking on a tank, and Solidus' tactical mindset is based off of three phases: stand, defend, and counter. While Gray Fox's tactical mindset is based off of attack, 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 and if countered, change up your approach and rely on a non-direct method to catch his opponent off guard, and then take advantage of any openings in the opponent's defense. And though Solidus' defense is exceptionally strong, it can only take so much damage before it falls apart. And it is for these reasons that I am giving Gray Fox the edge as a battle tactician. A fight between Gray Fox and Solidus Snake would certainly be an interesting matchup to witness, with Solidus being in much better physical shape and having more weapons at his disposal, and Gray Fox having a much wider set of combative skills and having a much more creative mindset on how to apply his skills. And though this fight would be in no way one-sided, there was no question after a hard-fought battle that Gray Fox would emerge victorious. Solidus' greatest weakness is that he is too much of a reactive defensive fighter and lacks a killer's initiative to have any hope of winning. Solidus without question has the best defensive and counter abilities of any blade wielder in the Metal Gear Solid franchise, but this was something that even a much more inexperienced Raiden was able to get around. What Solidus needs to do is once he has successfully countered an opponent's offensive attack, he needs to immediately go on the total offense and overwhelm his opponents without giving them a chance to recover. With the use of a submachine gun, 2 swords, and 2 tentacle arms that can be used as melee weapons and can fire off missiles, he is bringing far more offensive might than anyone, but chooses not to use them in such a way. While Gray Fox may not be the toughest opponent around, he is more than capable of recognizing an opponent's combative methods and adapting his approach to respond in kind, and he does have the equipment to help him achieve this goal. What ultimately makes this type of engagement Gray Fox's fight is his ability to recognize the strengths of an opponent, reduce their combative options, then change up his combative approach to place his opponent at a disadvantage. And despite Solidus being equipped with layers upon layers of armor, there is, however, one spot that is not protected at all, and that is the top of Solidus' head. And this is certainly a weak point that Gray Fox would exploit once he has successfully set up the conditions to execute the killing blow. What this fight would be is a slightly more extended version of Screw Attack's deathmatch between Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Leonardo and Battletoads Zitz, with Zitz being able to easily outmatch Leonardo in an offensive manner, but once Leonardo took the fight to a location of his choice and applied his tactics as a ninja, he saw his opening and caught Zitz completely off guard, leading to his victory. Now let's set up this fight. Let's say it takes place on top of the Federal Hall building where Solidus Snake fought Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Gray Fox and Solidus are standing some meters apart, and Gray Fox, uncloaked, would rush at Solidus, but Solidus counters by opening up with his P90 submachine gun, causing Gray Fox to jump back and easily deflect all the bullets fired at him. Solidus throws away his P90 submachine gun and draws his katana and Wakashi high-frequency blades and prepares for Gray Fox's offensive. Fox re-engaged and using his incredible speed manages to close the distance and begins throwing a series of quick slashes at Solidus, but he immediately wraps his 2 tentacle arms around his body, successfully protecting himself from Fox's slashes, and in retaliation, he swings his tentacles in a powerful arch swing which knocks Gray Fox hard into a wall, knocking him to the ground. After taking a very hard hit, Gray Fox knows that he can't try this again, and realizes that as long as Solidus has his tentacle arms equipped, he has no chance of getting to Solidus directly, so Fox begins targeting the arms. Gray Fox fires all 20 rounds from his arm-mounted cannon at Solidus. However, Solidus counters by simply wrapping himself once again with his tentacle arms, and though he is not taking any physical damage, his arms are being damaged at the same time. Gray Fox then charges at Solidus once again, however he responds by using his tentacle arms to fire off a series of rockets at Fox, but Fox is too fast to hit, and as Gray Fox gets closer to Solidus, he attempts to grab him with his tentacles, but Fox easily dodges the tentacles, but this time he manages to deliver 2 powerful slashes to Solidus' tentacle arms, damaging them, now forcing Solidus to have to eject them. In retaliation, Solidus charges at Gray Fox using his suit's boosters to leave a trail of fire behind him, but Gray Fox manages to dodge Solidus' charge. Then Gray Fox comes up with a really clever idea. He suddenly cuts a layer of the top section of the Federal Hall roof building and kicks it at Solidus. However, as he kicks it at Solidus from the left side of Solidus' body, which is his line of sight, in the small amount of time that the roof layer is blocking Solidus' sight of him, he immediately activates his cloak and jumps up to a higher ledge of the Federal Hall building. Solidus, using his boosters, easily dodges the boulder, but now he's completely lost sight of Gray Fox, not knowing where he went. Solidus holds his katana and Wakashi blades in a guard position as he cautiously scans the area trying to find Gray Fox. But Fox is just right above him, still cloaked, just waiting for the right moment to strike. After a few short moments, Solidus, in confusion, not knowing exactly what to do, lowers his blades, and it is at that very moment that, in classical ninja style, still cloaked, Gray Fox jumps from the high ledge and slashes the top section of Solidus' head, ending his life quickly and quietly. And thus, I declare Gray Fox, the Cyborg Ninja, the victor. And that's a wrap. Please remember that this outcome was my own personal opinion, and feel free to share your own thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Do you think that Gray Fox is too much of a badass to let such an underrated character like Solidus Snake take him down? Or do you think Solidus would finally grow some balls and take apart Gray Fox while he's down, not giving him a chance to retaliate? Please also like and subscribe to keep track of me and my future Versus Series matchups and other awesome videos. And like always, thank you guys for watching, and to celebrate the release of Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition coming out later this month, here is a preview of my next Versus Series matchup.